Hayden, since this is your first foray with us in this live draft, we are at pick number 11. Heading into it, what's the mindset? What's the strategy here when you're drafting at the end of round one? Because it's very different in the first 3 to 4 selections, which we had in our first fantasy draft this summer.
Well, the first priority is to not auto draft. We're at the turn here and we're podcasting. This is my first time handling all responsibilities. So trying to limit the auto drafts. But outside of that, we have to make our first decision if we're going to go RB at the turn, maybe Travis Kelce, maybe Julio Jones. And then I'm assuming that we're all on the same page with wide receivers in like the rounds 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 range. But the first 2 picks is going to be where we're laying the foundation.
Daigle, any wise thoughts?
It varies. At the back end of the draft, the first 10 picks can get a little wild. So I prefer just to see how it plays out. Most of the time it does end up running back, but you never know. Let's just see what happens here.
And since we are setting this draft up, I do want to say that this is Hayden Winks' draft. Okay. He is in the end a decision maker. I said this in our first live draft of the summer. If you want to go back and listen to that one, because I will be interested to see what dynamics and what ADPs and what players have changed drastically. But I think Daigle and I are just here to offer not even advice, just feedback to maybe talk him out of selections. But in the end, like I said, Hayden is the GM. We're just those, area scouts that give our reports, don't have any power in the say. So if Hayden's on an island with his selections, Hayden's on an island with his selections, and I think that would only add to it. I will say here at the 11 spot, if you want to be in the top 3, I think, but if not, you can absolutely be very comfortable with the 2 backs you're going to get at 11 and then 14. And if that's the trend where everyone's going in, then I think that comfort in those 2 running back spots where you get 2 feature backs is a really good position to be in.
Much like we did with someone named Ian Hartitz, we will just offer our opinions. That's it. But it's going to be Hayden's team. And the back end of the draft, my favorite back end turns have been either Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce in tight end premium in particular, or Miles Sanders and Kenyan Drake. But again, we'll just see how this shakes out.
Any thought here, Hayden, since you're going to be multitasking, any thought here on taking a running back at 11 and then at 14 getting a tight end? Getting someone like Travis Kelce or George Kittle at that spot?
Yeah, I've been all in on Kelce the entire offseason. He has so much touchdown regression coming his way, and that's like not even including that if Patrick Mahomes just throws for 50 touchdowns again, then what Travis Kelce would be doing. But I can usually wait until the second round for him. So the first pick for me, it's got to be one of these running backs. I'm looking at Joe Mixon in particular. I'm hoping that he falls, but when you're picking at the end of the draft, I think there's such an advantage of having a top 3 pick that I'm throwing basically the floors out the window in best ball. I'm just drafting the guys who I think have the highest ceilings around this pick, because you have to make up for the advantages that a Christian McCaffrey owner has.
We're 1 pick away. The draft started Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Ezekiel Elliott, Alvin Kamara. Actually, 2 wide receivers went in round 1, and Michael Thomas and Devontae Adams. Dalvin Cook went at the 6th overall selection. Right before you, Miles Sanders and Aaron Jones went. So you have a lot of running backs here to choose from. How will you decide between Mixon and Nick Chubb mainly?
Yeah, so with Mixon, I'm going to end up drafting him. And the reason for that is just I think the Bengals offense is going to improve so much. They run at a high tempo, and the Mixon is also another positive touchdown regression candidate. And I think that they can use him more out of the backfield as a receiver. We saw that with Burrow and Clyde Edwards-Hilaire at LSU. So I'm going with the upside with Mixon here.
If you told me to pick one, I would go Mixon over Kenyan Drake, both over Nick Chubb. But in my own personal best ball leagues, just because I play more, I've been going back and forth and just drafting both because I think both have exponential ceilings.
Speaking of best ball, I do want to outline, just for those of you who just think it's this term that we throw out. One, I would advocate everyone to go out there and try it, because to me, it's the best form of researching your own draft from in your office league or your friend's league or whatever. And it has, real money tied to it. And you have nothing to do after you draft. It sets your optimal lineup each and every week. In this draft, we have 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, obviously a quarterback, obviously 1 tight end, and then it's 1 defense. And so, not having waivers, not having to set your lineups, it's high upside drafting. We'll refer to that a lot, I'm sure. in this as well. Any hesitation with Joe Mixon? Because this is an offensive line that I think you could easily argue it's the worst in the NFL. There's some mention of a holdout, maybe Gio Bernard starting the year with more touches than expected. Any hesitation, Daigle?
I think his counting stats, his career high number of touches last year, are slightly blown out of proportion because in those few games that Ryan Finley started, I know we don't like to speak too negative on teams here, but having said that, I'm going to do it. And the Bengals, like with Finley under center, truly were trying to go home, just handing the ball into his belly 30 times a game, did not care about game script or anything else. However, still uber efficient on those touches, and there is no competition as long as he doesn't hold out. That's also a reason why he's probably getting knocked down a few boards, because the threat of a holdout is still there.
So, Hayden, right after you, DeAndre Hopkins went, then Travis Kelce, so that throws the tight end scenario out the window. You decided to go Kenyan Drake over Nick Chubb. Why?
Yeah, this is just I think that the Cardinals offense, like the Bengals offense, has a chance to run a lot more plays than they did last year. I think the Cardinals were second in pace last year and were 22nd in plays. That just means that the defense wasn't very good and the offense couldn't stay on the field long enough to sustain drives. With the offensive line looking a little bit better with the DeAndre Hopkins acquisition, I think that the Cardinals offense could be running 50 to 100 plays more this year than they did last year. I think that Kenyan Drake is the person that's going to be benefiting from that the most.
Even if it's a two-back system with Chase Edmonds, and I don't think it will be. Chase Edmonds will get a few touches here and there. I still think it's Drake's offense. The fact is you want pieces in this offense altogether, and that's why I love Drake. I think his ceiling is not being accounted for because he does have the ceiling of a top 5, top 6 back.
It's with these two selections, I mean, you are trying to find shares on a team and two offenses that are, on the uptick, right? That are progressing, because I believe Joe Mixon has been like the number 13 and number 10 running back over the last 2 years. Those are awful teams that he was on, awful offensive lines. What if they're just magically better, which is absolutely possible in year 2 of Zach Taylor, getting Jonah Williams back, obviously Joe Burrow coming into the fold. So basically that's the floor that with him. And then with Kenyan Drake last year, I think we can all point to the Arizona Cardinals offense being one that was a lot of fun to watch because of Kyler Murray. But in terms of consistency, in terms of red zone offense, when they were a bottom 4 team in the league last year, he still racked up over 800 rushing yards, 8 touchdowns in the final 8 games of the season. Those are both two players who almost certainly have a 15 to 18 touch floor. And if the floor of the offenses were last year, that's only a positive that almost certainly they both will improve as well.
19.5 fantasy points per game in 8 starts with the Cardinals. And whatever you think about, Benjamin, the fact is he was added in the 7th round. So not much of a threat.
Yeah, and then like from this point forward, we have our 2 running backs. Obviously, the floor is a little bit lower than you would want with Kenyan Drake. You don't even know if he's going to fully get the 3-down rule or not. But we're not drafting for floors in best ball. We need to get first place, and I think that the only option was to shoot for the upsides with Mixon, with Drake, in ascending offenses.
I think we're all kind of in agreement that the likes of Joe Mixon and Kenyan Drake belong above Austin Eckler, Nick Chubb, and Josh Jacobs. That's the order that they went in this draft, guys. Is that the order you would place them as well? Would you take Eckler over the likes of Nick Chubb, who was fantastic last year? Obviously, his snaps dipped a little bit when Kareem Hunt was involved. I think Josh Jacobs on the field, there were moments when he was a top 5 running back in the league last year. But that running game probably was better than expected last year, and he's still, a question in the passing game as well, Daigle.
Yeah, he lost over just 2 touches per game whenever Kareem Hunt joined in week 10. We know his target share regressed pretty much all the way down to its minimum possible floor since Kareem Hunt is the pass catching back there. And they've had discussions of including both on the field at times, which is we know it's the ultimate coach speak in the offseason. Every running back's becoming a wide receiver in the offseason. It's still, though, the catching and his involvement in the pass catching game that concerns me when trying to rank him over Eckler. So despite the fact that we understand that Eckler is due for negative regression, I still prefer Eckler over Chubb, if only because he is the pass catching back with the Los Angeles.
Yeah, I think we're splitting hairs with all these guys. I think in PPR leagues, I prefer Eckler over Chubb. Just when Kareem Hunt was involved, Chubb's, like Diggle mentioned, he just wasn't the same player as on a touch basis. I think the one guy that we're kind of leaving out here is, and this is getting a little bit bolder, is Clyde Edwards-Hilaire.
Yes, sir.
I moved him up. I had him, I think, in our in the magazine. I think he was like my RB12. I moved him up to RB10. I just want to shoot for the upside, and the Chiefs' offense, if he takes 60% of the touches, and with his skill set, I just want to be higher than consensus with Clyde Edwards-Hilaire.
I love it. And that would be the ultimate goal for me if I was in one of the top 2 selections or top 3 selections. And, I got McCaffrey and Barkley and Zeke or whoever else, that on the way back, Clyde Edwards-Hilaire would be there. I'm with you. I mean, I think you can basically look at Christian McCaffrey's rookie season and project that for Clyde Edwards-Hilaire, playing 65, 70% of the snaps, seeing at least 7 carries a game. I'm not sure we're going to see the same 7 targets per game that McCaffrey got, but maybe shift some of those targets over to carries. And then at the end of that year, I mean, again, not even being a complete full-time player, McCaffrey ended the season as the running back 13. We know that the Chiefs' offense is a much better one than McCaffrey had during his rookie season. I do not honestly get the concerns and questions right now. And the only real concern and question is just shoving Damian Williams into the faces of everyone out there. And I'm just over that. I mean, I'm so over that. I'm so ready just to have a super uber talented back that was handpicked to be the best pass catching threat in this offense and the best one we've seen out of the SEC in years. And that is Clyde Edwards-Hilaire. 100%.
We just had an odd wide receiver run, or at least an unusual one. Chris Godwin, Odell Beckham, Kenny Golladay, and Juju Smith-Schuster and Allen Robinson in that order. And that order is what is slightly odd. You're not used to seeing them fall in that particular range.
And that's kind of the pitfalls of having one of those top 3 selections, right? Because while you might have started with Saquon or Zeke, now in your round 2 and round 3 selections, while these are fantastic players, you're getting Odell Beckham and then Allen Robinson, which is great, or Kenny Golladay and Juju Smith-Schuster, which is great. But then round 4 and round 5 is going to roll around. And as we talked about, a lot this summer, you just can't feel comfortable with David Montgomery, let's say, or David Johnson or Todd Gurley. So it's almost imperative. And that's why, Hayden, I really liked this selection that we were given here at number 11, because it allows us to then feel just much more comfortable about our team when we get to round 12, round 13.
Yeah, we're benefiting from the top 16 receiver range that we all think is so deep this year, and we're going to be able to get 2 of those guys at 3 and 4, and then oftentimes around 5 you get somebody that you like at receiver, maybe like a Robert Woods or somebody like that. So usually you start the team very balanced on the backside. You get RB, and then 3 receivers, maybe a tight end mix in there as well. But I think from a roster construction standpoint, I prefer going running back at the turn, and instead of going like a wide receiver or something like that.
Can you click on available running backs, Hayden? I want to see James Conner went. So James Conner went over Leonard Fournette, Melvin Gordon, Todd Gurley, Chris Carson, Le'Veon Bell, Devin Singletary, just to name a few.
Yep. Makes sense to me.
Man, that seems still pretty early.
Daigle, we got a lot of heat in our last live draft for taking James Conner taking James Conner well ahead of consensus. I think it's going to be consensus as we roll around. I really think James Conner is kind of going to be that bridge running back that is in his own tier almost between those top ones that we talked about. And then your Leonard Fournettes, your David Johnson, so on and so forth. Because when I think, while he has definitely missed some time, we expect the Steelers to be a much better offense this year. We have seen them roll with one back in the past, and we've seen James Conner be productive in that role before. And I'm not sure that we can say the same thing for a lot of the backs that are to be taken immediately after him as well.
And as we discussed last time we got yelled at, it seems as if that is the plan. Mike Tomlin wants to use one particular back, James Conner. And, of course, that's if he stays healthy. It's a matter of if he stays healthy, and that's my concern.
All right, let's go to wide receiver. Because I know that's where you're leaning. You're not looking at tight end. I know you have that tab up, Hayden. You're not going tight end here.
Well, I want to go over one thing, and Daigle and Josh, I want your opinion. What if
40 seconds to pick?
Right, Lamar Jackson stacked with Mark Andrews. The person behind us already has a tight end. We can stack both of these guys, and I think that people are underestimating the volume uptick that we would get with a Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews stack, and we would figure out receiver later.
I mean, look, for this podcast, for it being different, I love that idea. I love you.
Tyler took Travis Kelce, right?
Yep. So we went Lamar Jackson.
So he's not going to take Mark Andrews. Great.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that'll lock it in. Diego, I think I saw you on Twitter mention this as well. Yes, we do not believe that Lamar Jackson is going to throw a touchdown on 9% of his passes, but he does throw touchdowns at a higher rate than other quarterbacks because with the run game so strong, they're closer to the goal line than most quarterbacks when they're passing the ball. So we should expect his touchdown rate to be higher than most quarterbacks. And even if that touchdown rate drops, that means that the Ravens are going to be passing the ball more. So I think that we're kind of underestimating Lamar Jackson, the passer in fantasy this year.
Yeah, it's always brought up about regression and, like this player was X good, so of course he falls backwards. But we also haven't seen Lamar put his foot on the gas for 16 games, even like 12 games. What if the Ravens now, if we expect their defense also to regress, are forced to play competitive game scripts weekly? Like, what does that entail for Lamar's volume, for his counting stats? Even if there are more turnovers, like it's an offense I not only want to watch, but one I want pieces of.
I love you for this, Hayden Winks, because, we kind of get in this group think the entire summer when all of us do these drafts, right? Well, you can just wait on quarterbacks. You can go get your Carson Wentz's is the name I keep bringing up. But at some point, Lamar Jackson becomes a value, right? And at the end of round 3, which is where we were just drafting, you're getting a player who obviously has a rushing upside, who is progressing as a passer. And now I think the reason why you were so comfortable with it is because you also get the stack with him as well. And Mark Andrews, who you ended up taking here in round 4, he wasn't even a halftime player last year. He played on 41% of the snaps last year. That's the same thing as what Hayden Hurst put out. I think if Mark Andrews ends up health-wise, scheme-wise, playing 80-something% of the snaps this year, he's most likely the locked-in tight end 3. And obviously getting that almost, if not more, than a full round later than where George Kittle went, I think that could be great value when we look back on this.
Yeah, I'm writing the Ravens fantasy preview that's going to be on the site this week. And everything I was looking at with Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews, they were so efficient. And if you believe that they're going to take a slight step back, they still have the 4th easiest schedule in the league somehow. And I just see the upside being so high with these two. And I'm saying this as somebody who has actually Patrick Mahomes over Lamar Jackson. But with game theory in these best balls, you have to stack to win. So I was comfortable taking Lamar over Patrick Mahomes, even though I have them flip-flopped in my rankings, just because Mark Andrews is on the board.
Let's talk about some of the wide receivers that you passed up on in order to get this stack. Almost, just 2 selections after you. It was Calvin Ridley. Then A.J. Brown went off the board. Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp. Who else is still out there? I mean, Terry McLaurin's out there. We talked about DK Metcalf on a recent episode. Keenan Allen, we've never even mentioned on this summer, it seems like. But these are all extremely talented wide receivers. We still have none. You still have to start 3 here. But I guess that's the position where we feel most comfortable when round 6, round 7 still rolls around. And that's why you were comfortable doing this as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be we're going to be chasing a lot of points at receiver, but we have to chase the upside at some point. Like I said before, we're chasing the Christian McCaffrey team because he has a 10-point advantage over our Joe Mixon, and we need to try to close that gap in any way possible. So maybe we can even find a little Marquis Brown here in a couple rounds.
So we have the double stack opportunity. We still have some of my wide receiver 2 favorites like DJ Chark, Terry McLaurin, Will Fuller coming up. So still ample room at receiver.
Is this the first draft you've taken a quarterback this early this summer, Hayden?
I may have had like Mahomes drop in round 3 if I started like with Kelce, like say I had like pick 8 or something like that. But it's pretty rare. I will only draft Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes if I already have one of their teammates on my team.
The Hill, Kelsey, Mahomes stack sort of went away because now Mahomes is being drafted at the second, third round turn. But since that is the case, I do like trying to sneak in the Edwards, Hilaire, Mahomes, and Mecole Hardman stack as just another unique way. But of course, you have to draft in the front of rounds to do that. It's really not possible in the back unless you're reaching on a few of those guys.
Are there those stacks? I know I'm putting you on the spot here. Are there any other stacks that come to mind? Because like in previous years, like last year, I love the Russell Wilson, Chris Carson, Tyler Lockett stack. I haven't done enough drafts, honestly, right now to feel comfortable with one that I feel like is a value or I'm drafting ahead of ADP and comfortable with it on 2 or 3 of those names. Daigle, any come to mind? I mean, I know we just mentioned 2.
I end up with some sort of Garoppolo, Kittle, and Coleman or Mostert a lot. I'm trying to think of everything.
I would just looking at these and looking at the players that I like on an individual level as well. Mm-hmm. If I had an end of round 1 selection, Miles Sanders, Carson Wentz, and Deshaun Jackson, based on where they're all going, is something that I would absolutely love and exit drafts with 100%.
The one I've been getting a lot is Matt Ryan, Calvin Ridley, and then the Cowboys, obviously, any of those receivers or Blake Jarwin or Zeke Elliott. I mean, there's all of those guys. But the one I think that Matt Ryan's kind of been slept on, like always, he's going to get you 300 yards passing every week, and they're going to lead the league in pass attempts this year again.
I would even throw in Hayden Hurst on there as well. If you really want to go in on that offense. I mean, Hayden Hurst's climb in ADP has been, it's been drastic over the last few weeks. Like in normal drafts, he's going as the tight end 12, but like in FFPC, which, are higher money leagues, he's going ahead of Rob Gronkowski. He's obviously going ahead of Jared Cook. Like these are names that have been productive in the past. And I think just a lot of people, and tell me if I'm speaking out of turn here, Daigle, a lot of people believe Hayden Hurst is just as talented as Austin Hooper was last year, and can fill that exact same role and pick it up exactly where he left it off. And, being around that tight end 10, tight end 11 mark makes just so much sense. So much sense.
I don't know if he's as good of a pass catching specialist, but at the tight end position, we really only care about usage. And recall whenever Hooper was absent last year, it was Jaden Graham who ran the 7th most routes at that position. And so I would assume they want to use one tight end, and that one tight end is they just spent a high amount of capital to bring over. Also, I just wrote up the Falcons preview. When people are listening to this, it'll be available on the site. And I got this from our own Hayden Winks that I put in the preview. So quickly, the Falcons passed the ball at the league's highest rate when trailing and also passed the ball at the 4th highest rate while protecting an in-game lead. Thus, we can assume they are just going to do nothing but pass the ball. And they also have the hardest schedule based on Vegas win totals, which means also they're probably going to be putting a bunch of negative game strips because we know they didn't improve their defense as well. So it just seems like an offense that their floor is arguably the highest outside of anyone except the Chiefs and Ravens.
All right, we have about 3 selections until your spot. You will only have the wide receiver tab open here. Look, Stefan Diggs is at the top of this list. I think Stefan Diggs is being criticized unfairly or unfairly treated this offseason from the fantasy football bubble. But then after him, there's likes of Devontae Parker. I know Deebo Samuel's still up there, Michael Gallup. Volume concerns with a bunch of these players, quarterback concerns with a bunch of these players, or just how distribution is going to happen. What's your mindset here, Hayden?
Well, I'm going to go full Peter Overset here. And some of these guys you kind of like a little bit better in a best ball. And Stefan Diggs definitely going to fit that mold. The best deep threat last year, in my opinion, was Stefan Diggs. And of course, Josh Allen's not anywhere near as good as Kirk Cousins as a passer. But I think you're going to get spiked weeks out of Stefan Diggs. Somebody like Devontae Parker, I'm kind of eyeing as well. Daigle, do you have any opinion between Parker versus Diggs? I'm kind of leaning Parker, actually.
No, don't. Stop it. Stop this. Stop it.
Who do we have? Who's available at running back right now?
No. Is there a flex? Do we have a flex or no?
No, there is no flex. There is no flex.
Yeah, that puts
we have 24 seconds. The Bills basically supported the wide receiver 20 last year. Stefan Diggs is being drafted as the wide receiver 24. If he just hits on 3 of those overthrows that Josh Allen missed last year, boom, you have touchdowns. Like, I do not understand taking someone like Devontae Parker over Stefan Diggs this year. I just don't.
All right, I'll trust you. Even though I'm the GM and you're the scout, and usually I'll glance over your scouting reports and just throw them out the window and then just go full dictator. I'll listen to you on this one.
The scouting report does not agree with that pick. Just to let the record show.
Interesting. I mean, look, Deante had a great season last year. Do not get me wrong. We've all been waiting for, that post hype to hit, and it finally hit last year. Stefan Diggs is still just 26 years old. Stefan Diggs has been one of the best wide receivers in the NFL for basically the last 4 seasons. I understand he's had some spike weeks, but guess what? In this format, you do not have to worry about the spiked weeks because you get them automatically. It makes the decision for you. And it also wouldn't surprise me at all if Diggs is way more consistent than the general consensus is giving him credit for this year, because Hayden, I brought this up on the podcast. Draft capital is associated to opportunity. Is it not? Like, I'm sure you have this formula in your back pocket you could share with us right now. And Stefan Diggs was the first round pick for the Bills this season. They're going to give him the football. I'm comfortable with him this year. Okay, you're back on the clock. Go ahead.
Daigle, Marquis Brown, triple stack. It's a little earlier than I would be drafting Marquis Brown over some of these other guys. I think I have Tyler Boyd, maybe a little bit higher, maybe even Gallup. But I think the stack's worth it, right?
Since we only have 20 seconds, I'll say Marquis Brown. But between the Diggs pick, I was going to argue Gallup, Boyd, or Marquis Brown. Those are my 3 guys I wanted to come away with 2 with.
Sorry, I talked into your time. Hayden, talk us through that a little bit more. Again, Marquis Brown is someone who week 1 was fantastic. Then it seemed like he got hurt basically immediately. He's a player that when on the field just runs at a different speed than everyone else. I feel like we didn't get to see everything out of Marquis Brown during his rookie year in terms of a complete performer, but like we saw those spike weeks already. And, if he becomes just a little more consistent in the game plan usage wise, which I think is probably more dependent on health than anything else, because I think the talent is there. Then you have a player here who could be a fringe, I think, top 20 wide receiver, if not even higher than that.
Yeah, a truly stud at Oklahoma. He averaged 18 yards per catch, even a little bit higher than that. And like you said, just last year, he just fully couldn't get there. After the season, John Harbaugh said that Marquis Brown wasn't near 100%. This offseason, Marquis Brown got the screw removed from his foot. And last week there was a report that things are going well with his rehab. So I'm hoping that we get the peak Marquis Brown, which could be just somebody that's taking 80-yard touchdowns over the top all the time. And the Ravens just didn't add anybody to the receiving core. And I mean, out after him, you're talking about Willie Snead, Devin Duvernay, who I liked out of Texas a little bit, but a limited player, and then Miles Boykin, who just didn't do anything last year. He was one of the worst rookie receivers, on a per route basis. So it's Marquis Brown and it's Mark Andrews, and that's it. So if Lamar Jackson has another MVP-like season, we've just captured the entire upside of that.
If I had to pick one to become the true number 2 receiver, since we know Mark Andrews is the number 2 receiver technically, it would be Miles Boykin. But again, that's hoping for a second-year breakout, and that's not really competition we're concerned about. Marquis Brown was basically only healthy for 2 games. The season opener, which was his coming-out party with 5 catches for 2 touchdowns against the Dolphins, and that divisional round loss against the Titans, 7 catches for 126 yards on high amount of volume since the Ravens were practically playing from behind throughout the entire game. So it's just someone to bet on at age 23 for all 16 games now that he's 1 year removed from Liz Frank surgery.
I do like to point out where quarterbacks go in drafts. Kyler Murray went in the last pick of the 5th round. I believe that Patrick Mahomes went in the 4th round in this draft as well. A few wide receivers that went after Marquis Brown, Will Fuller, Michael Gallup. Michael Gallup, we've talked about it on the show. Basically, very, very similar opportunity in production to what Amari Cooper put out last year, but he's going about 20 wide receiver spots differently almost. Then AJ Green, Jarvis Landry. I really like the receiver that just went off the board in Tyler Boyd. I think Tyler Boyd is a limited player, but if we can take whatever Joe Burrow did at LSU and translate it and look at, he targets everyone on the field, but he absolutely loved targeting Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson almost won every single one of his routes or every single one of his catches out of the slot. I would actually take Tyler Boyd over AJ Green. I think there's a lot more questions surrounding AJ Green's game right now than is being discussed. So
there are only a handful of names in the industry. When they mention someone, my ears perk up. And recently on a RotoViz pod, the RotoViz Overtime pod, terrific if anyone listens to it, Sean Siegel, at FF Contrarian on Twitter mentioned that Tyler Boyd is one of his favorite picks this year. And it's for the reason you cited, him playing Justin Jefferson's role that allowed him to set the school record in receptions last year with Joe Burrow. And then just the fact that Tyler Boyd actually averages more fantasy points per game when he's on the field with AJ Green so far in his career, because a Green attracts the better defender. So, I've been coming around on the idea on drafting Boyd higher, because right now in terms of percentage I've been drafting him this offseason, I am well behind.
I wasn't expecting to make this, a Tyler Boyd section of the podcast, but let's do it, okay? Let's talk about that wide receiver group, right? You have AJ Green, who was hurt last season, didn't play a single down. There's some debate on if he could have returned, if he couldn't. I understand why he set out. I don't even know if he's going to be on the Bengals for this entire season. He's a very quiet person. He doesn't want to make, drama in the media. But again, I don't get the sense, and even from them drafting T. Higgins, that they see maybe even more than a 1-year return for AJ Green, if that. Then you have John Ross. We know that story. Great start to the season, still gets injured. There's talent there, obviously. I think the mainstay, the most consistent force in that offense is Tyler Boyd out of the slot. And here where we are, and him going, in round 6, I think we look back on that from a volume standpoint, and I think even from a red zone and ceiling standpoint, Tyler Boyd's a good value.
Yeah, the Bengals have, just if you're building a receiver core like a basketball team, you have your point guard, you have your alpha receivers, you have your deep threat with John Ross. And all of them fill the role, and the only one that doesn't have a question mark is Tyler Boyd. Yep. And I think that just the floor is relatively high, and I think Joe Burrow's going to be one of the better passers, even as a rookie without the pandemic. He's just so talented, and he's so mature that I think that him funneling the targets to Boyd is definitely a possibility.
Just imagine if we had a chance to draft Tyler Boyd over Stefan Diggs.
Well, look. Okay, I might have gone
kidding.
Tyler Boyd over Marquis Brown. I understand for stack purposes why we did not. Look, at some point, Daigle, you and I will have this conversation, even extended one, about Stefan Diggs. We have another couple months to do that. Wonderful. Okay.
Quickly on AJ Green, though, I just want to say he's literally the hardest player for me to pin in any projections. I have no idea. 35 of 64 possible games the past 4 years, 32 now, playing on a franchise tag. He's audibly said he doesn't want. I genuinely have no idea, for better or worse, what his outlook is.
This is why you don't do projections, that you just avoid and save yourself the heartache. That's why. Okay, a few other names that went off the board. Evan Ingram towards the end of round 6, Kareem Hunt, Darius Geis, Julian Edelman went at the top of round 7. Fascinating to me that Mark Ingram and J.K. Dobbins went in back-to-back selections. Hayden, we have about 6 selections into your pick. I would say about 5 selections now. You are back in the running back tab. Are you seriously considering a running back? It doesn't seem like there are many intriguing options with upside, and this team is certainly an upside one that you're going with. Where are you thinking right now?
I was just looking at Damian Williams, possibly, but I don't think he really fits our roster construction. We're going to be most likely drafting a wide receiver here. But I was just making sure that there wasn't somebody sliding too far. But yeah, the wide receivers, Deebo Samuel, Christian Kirk, Deante Johnson, Jameson Crowder, Darius Slayton, Brandon Cooks. I mean, this is why most of the time you're not drafting a quarterback and tight end early, but we were going for the stack. These names aren't the prettiest, but we're going to hammer probably 4 or 5 of these in the next 6-7 rounds.
Marvin Jones actually went off the board.
He's a good one. That's a good pick.
He is. I like him as a value, but he's not a value when you're drafting him at the beginning of the 7th round. His ADP is in the mid-9th right now. So that's pretty early considering he went over Christian Kirk, Deante Johnson, Jameson Crowder, and Darius Slayton, just to name a few.
This is not, a live draft that people can be tuning in for live. So you can be free and honest here, Hayden Winks. Who is at the top of your wish list right now? Would it be Deante Johnson? Because that's probably who it would be for me.
Yeah, it's probably him. I'm kind of nervous that everyone's just assuming Big Ben's healthy and we were drafting all these guys at a certain spot last year, and we have to factor in that there's a chance that Big Ben's just not the same. But I do agree that Deante Johnson is a good player, and if Big Ben is actually healthy, that they should be slinging the ball around a decent amount. I'm not sure. None of these names are really that exciting to me. I'm hoping that we could see CeeDee Lamb later, but we can talk about him later.
Let's sort the running backs quickly. I want to see who is on the board here because we only have 2 so far. Yeah, it looks like we're waiting a little bit. The top of the list is Marlon Mack, Kerryon Johnson, James White, Phillip Lindsay, just to give people an example.
If you don't feel good, what do you do? I mean, do you just have to force it because you have to start?
There's guys. I mean, we can pick someone like Jameson Crowder, who I don't think ceiling is that high, but we do need. I mean, eventually we have to grab some guys who we think are going to get seven targets a game. So maybe play it safe with Crowder on this one, who should not be your wide receiver 3 in drafts, but the way that we did things, I think we're going to go with him.
I think I would have gone Kirk over Crowder.
Well, we might be able to get Kirk on the way back here.
Yeah.
And right before you, I want to add that Deante Johnson and Mecole Hardman went off the board, so neither of those were options. I think Jamison Crowder is an interesting pick here. I think Christian Kirk is going to spend the majority of his time in the slot this year. I think they had to use him outside last year at Arizona because just they lack so many weapons on the outside. I think in an ideal world, if it works perfectly for Cliff Kingsbury, they'll run a lot of 4 wide receiver sets, and that'll put Larry and Christian Kirk in the slot this season. That to me is just a benefit to the projections for what Christian Kirk could bring you this year. Any interest in rookies? Jerry Jeudy's up there, Henry Ruggs. Yeah,
I mean, I've been way higher on CeeDee Lamb than everyone else. This is a little too early for that even, but I mean, are any of these wide receiver names catching your eye, Daigle? I mean, is it Christian Kirk and then everyone else for you?
Yeah, again, I just like pieces in the Cardinals offense. When it comes to this group in particular, because we're talking John Brown, Jerry Jeudy behind him. I like CeeDee Lamb as well, but I would take Kirk over Lamb 10 out of 10 times.
Are we looking for a team's wide receiver 1? Because if we're looking for a team's wide receiver 1, Sterling Shepard stands out to me as a possibility. I think Henry Ruggs stands out as a possibility. I think Ruggs is obviously much more of a big play threat than Sterling Shepard. But I think a lot of us liked what Daniel Jones did last year from a fantasy perspective in terms of, just having no fear. And Darius Slayton, we've talked about this in the past, Hayden. Darius Slayton, I'm not sure how much you can bank on, even though I thought he obviously outperformed his draft status and he showed a lot of promise. The longer and the closer you look at the stats, the less it points to, a breakout even more so in year 2.
Daigle, real quick, Tyler Higby with Mark Andrews. I'm really high on Higby. He's going a little bit further.
There's no flex.
I know, but it's best ball and it's tight ends.
If I take a top 4 tight end, even if I grab Ingram, I don't add a tight end until 15 or 16.
9 seconds.
All right, we are going to panic select Tyler Higby. I'm doing it. This is just okay. In best ball, it's a little bit different than in redraft. In best ball, tight end production on a week-to-week basis just goes like up and down like crazy. And these guys do not have the same bye week. We are done drafting tight ends at this point. You can grab 2 of them and call it a day. That's my take. I think that Higby could be a top 4 tight end this year. And between Mark Andrews and Higby, I think we're going to be leading the tight end position in this league. I just didn't like the receivers. All these guys are the same. Like the wide receiver 40, but the difference between that and the wide receiver 55 is just it's pretty slim. And I think that there's a chance that Tyler Higby can be a true difference maker. And in best ball, you're picking the spiked weeks, and it's not in redraft where you have to start one or the other.
All right, let's regroup. Let us regroup. Okay, this is the team that Hayden Winks has right now. Lamar Jackson at quarterback, Joe Mixon, Kenyan Drake at running back, Stefan Diggs, Marquis Brown, Jamison Crowder are the 3 wide receivers at the moment. We've already doubled up through 8 rounds of this draft with Mark Andrews and Tyler Higby. John Daigle, let's consult. Okay. What is the strategy for the wide receiver position as we move on? There are 3 starters each week. There's only 3 on the roster right now. I think you have to go heavy, high upside. And if someone like Jalen Reagor is on the board at some point in the near future, he's someone who we should absolutely look at.
We can do Reagor and Deshaun Jackson if you want to. That's something I've been doing a lot of.
Henry Ruggs is another name. I mean, I think Justin Jefferson is another name as well. Like, I think that, I mean, obviously, if Sterling Shepard is on the return, which is, in 15 or 16 selections, which I highly doubt he will be, But right now, I think we have to go with, and Hayden, tell me if I'm incorrect in this line of thinking, somewhat unknowns, players who are on new teams, ones who we think have the potential to really jump up to a different level of wide receiver player production level than we've seen in their past, because we need to move away from the safe options at this point. Don't you think?
Yeah, and just going back to the last pick, my thought was the player that we would have drafted right there. We didn't like those wide receivers, the Jalen Ragers and stuff that we can get in 2-3 rounds. The drop off between those two guys is not that big, and the difference between like Tyler Higby and a Noah Fant, in my opinion, is drastic enough where I was willing to go chase the upside with Tyler Higby. But like you said, we're going to be drafting basically wide receivers the rest of the way, and this is like a super fragile team. We only have 2 running backs so far, and you have a huge stack with the Ravens. But who cares if you get last place? We're trying to get first place.
We're also seeing Deebo Samuel fall a little bit right now. His ADP since the injury has gone down to the end of the 8th round as the wide receiver 37 overall. And right now he's sort of slipping into that range and beyond it. I don't think he'll fall, 10 picks, 12 picks back to us, but we're seeing him fall a little bit too, to the point where I'd risk it right now.
Okay, we're almost at the start of round 9. Hayden, let's just do a little reset here and look at who the best available players, I guess, in terms of ADP are and rank here on Best Ball 10s. Let's do by position first. Let's go to quarterback. Still on the board at quarterback, Josh Allen, Matt Ryan, Carson Wentz, Aaron Rodgers, and Drew Brees. Here are the top 5 in their rankings. At running back, it's Marlon Mack, Phillip Lindsay, Ronald Jones, Sony Michel, Tariq Cohen are the top 5 there. Let's go over to wide receiver, Deebo Samuel, John Brown, Jerry Jeudy, Mike Williams, Sterling Shepard. And then the tab that we will never, ever, ever look at again. It's Austin Hooper, Jared Cook, Noah Fant, Mike Gesicki, and Dallas Goedert there at tight end. Even if we didn't feel great about those wide receivers, I still think that is the position right now that I feel most comfortable with, other than quarterback. I mean, obviously quarterback, this is probably around the area where I would start looking at that, if not a round or 2 later. But you know what? If we put this plan into action, high upside, high variance possibly, we could nail it. We could nail it with the right picks, Hayden. I believe in you. I believe in your vision here.
I mean, these receivers, some of these guys are going to be top 35 options. And I'm seeing a lot of receivers with
Sean Jackson. Jackson, start him.
Some talent. Where is he? Yes. Some talent on good offenses. I think that Henry Ruggs would be a good pick. Sammy Watkins, eventually we're going to have to be targeting as somebody that who, of course, could be like a top 20 fantasy receiver if everything goes his way. We've seen the talent in that offense. I think the receivers, there's enough of them that we can piece together 3 of these guys that we like over the next probably 3 or 4 rounds.
I don't think we meant to do it this way, but I will say I typically don't draft just to fill out the starting lineup. That's kind of how it worked out here with 1 flex and then also a second tight end added in. But we started with 2 running backs and we still have 2 running backs. And so that needs to be addressed shortly.
Well, let's look at the running back tab. Let's see any names, and it certainly doesn't have to be in this order. You have Tevin Coleman starred. I would star Latavius Murray, 1,000%. I would star Matt Breida as well if we're going with these spiked weeks.
Alexander Madison and Matt Breida would be my next choices.
Yep. So these are all players who, I don't know if I'd feel comfortable taking them here, but are ones who I like. But man, I just love that you throw me off balance here a little bit, Hayden, because this is not a style that I would ever draft on my own. So it's cool to, obviously try to put myself in the room of someone who's doing it right now and just see how it works out. So
yeah, like I keep mentioning, we are chasing the Christian McCaffrey team who started off 10 points a week higher than any of the rest of the league. To do that, you need to hit on a lot of things going right. And I like that we have the Ravens. I think people are sleeping on this Ravens passing offense.
I would look to, given our roster, Hayden's roster, I would definitely look to come away with 2 of Coleman, Latavius, Madison, and Breida. These turns.
So we're not going wide receiver again?
I would not go wide receiver again.
I might. It's either we're definitely getting at least one running back. I like
Latavius.
Coleman,
Latavius.
I like all of these guys. I took all these like the top 5 handcuffs in my rankings and just bumped them up 5-10 spots. I put them over the Sony Michels. I mean, those guys just are not going to win your league. If one of these guys starts 7-8 weeks, we're looking pretty there. So
I mean, in 2 games that Alvin Kamara missed last year, Latavius was running back 2 overall, was running back 3 overall. I think he's going to hover around 10 touches a week, no matter what. So he gives you some standalone value, maybe 8 to 10 touches. This is also a team that barely ran the football inside the 5-yard line last year, as evidenced by Alvin Kamara's touchdown numbers last year. Now, Kamara will certainly get more in that area, but even if the team goes up in terms of the volume of rushing inside the 5-yard line, surely Latavius will see some positive regression in that manner. To me, of those 4 names that we mentioned, again, the Tevin Coleman, Latavius Murray, Alexander Madison, Matt Breida, I think Latavius has the most standalone value and the most handcuff value if his starter does go down.
Yeah, I'm kind of liking the idea of picking one of the true handcuffs and then one of the guys that if one of our starters went down, that like Tevin Coleman is going to at least get probably 8 to 12 touches. So maybe a Latavius Murray, Tevin Coleman. The one thing when you are drafting at the near one of the turns, you got to look at who the people drafting behind you have on the roster. And in this case, this team has 5 receivers and 1 running back. So you know that they're going to be drafting a running back. So we have to at least use our first pick on a running back here.
And for whatever it's worth, Latavius' insurance says any surprising Kamara holdout.
Yep. That's really smart, Hayden. I mean, I don't do that enough. I think we obviously have a gap in time when we're allowed to do that because, if you were thinking a wide receiver running back here or some other combination, then selecting the running back first based on the structure of the roster of the guy that's in between your 2 picks makes sense.
Yeah, we did that with the Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews earlier. Just he already had the tight ends. That means that we were for sure going to lock up Lamar first. We're doing it.
You're on the clock. I guess you are taking Latavius here right before you. Tevin Coleman went, so it kind of made the selection for you. Hayden Hurst and Robbie Anderson went as well. Did I talk you into Latavius, or do you like him by yourself as well? If I wasn't here,
no, I definitely like him. He after the guys that aren't going to be playing probably enough to start as your wide receiver or running back to Latavius Murray, Alexander Madison, all these guys, Chase Edmonds, I'll throw in there too. These are guys that I'm targeting over your Sony Michels, your Philip Lindsay's, a Jordan Howard, all these guys that even if they were getting all of the carries, I just don't think that their upside would be enough where it's actually going to make a difference.
I not Googled. I looked at my own notes from a previous podcast. Hopefully you listened to this one. It was on 6/19, I believe. In the 2 games that Kamara missed, Latavius Murray got 33 opportunities in both. I mean, just wild. And then in the games that Kamara played, he still averaged 11 touches per game. To me, that's the perfect floor/ceiling play that we were looking for with this selection. So Daigle doesn't seem enthused. Daigle's slowly shaking his head. I'm
shaking my head because Tyler has 1 running back at the end here, and he picked Philip Lindsay as his RB2 right now. And it's like, God, he doesn't even have a role. Like, you have to go Madison and just hope Cook does stay away at that point. Because, I mean, Lindsay doesn't even offer upside.
I think we maybe went a little early with the Latavius pick because that was the podcast that we talked about our favorite selections in round 7 through round 12. And I think typically he's going around round 10. We took him in obviously round 9, but who cares, right? Who cares once we get to this area? Throw out ADP, take players that you like more than anything, in my opinion.
We also have to be aware that we're not looking at ADP for tight end premium leagues that are vaulting all of these tight ends above somebody like Latavius Murray, and non-tight end premium leagues, they're not going to be going quite as high. So,
all right, the drafter that was in between you, again, needed running backs, took Philip Lindsay and Sony Michel. That means you're back on the clock. I really want to get Sterling Shepard here, but it's up to you.
Dale, what are your thoughts on Anthony Miller? I kind of like the underrated 10 targets a game aspect of this.
Yeah, I like Anthony Miller. I think the Bears are still a questionable offense. Like Nick Foles is definitely like the best quarterback Allen Robinson in particular has played with. Shepard, though, if you told me to pick one or the other, I would go Shepard.
All right, 2 out of 3 vote Shepard. I'm going Shepard.
Thank you. I appreciate that, John Daigle. I appreciate that.
Everyone cites Golden Tate's numbers with Daniel Jones, led the team in targets from Daniel Jones, and led the team in targets overall. But remember, Tate also played 2 more games than Shepard with Daniel Jones. So the numbers are fluky. When Shepard was on the field, he led in target share. He's the player that I think has the highest floor and will lead in target share, whereas Darius Slayton has the ceiling. And so I just don't think Golden Tate is a player I really want, honestly. And that totally differs from everyone else's opinion, so I could very well be wrong.
And look, we don't know about defenses necessarily entering each season, but I think Sterling Shepard is a more comfortable best ball selection than he is in redraft, because the first 4 weeks of the season, they face some very difficult secondaries and defenses. They face the Pittsburgh Steelers at Chicago, San Francisco, and the Rams in the first 4 weeks. Guess what? You don't have to worry about him thinking of starting him or not in those weeks. Then later on, the midweeks, you get Washington, you get Philly, you get Tampa, you get Washington again, you get Philly again, you get Cincinnati in week 12. So this is a pick in Sterling Shepard that I think by the middle of the season that we'll be very, very happy about.
For me, Sterling Shepard's just the most talented receiver out of all of the Giants guys. I like him better than Golden Tate. I like him better than Darius Slayton. And I think he's just going to end up being the top receiver out of that group. But the whole offense is scary just because Evan Ingram's so good too, Saquon Barkley. We're really betting on Daniel Jones living up to some of his top 6 overall pick potential.
Well, I mean, you mentioned 10 targets with Anthony Miller. I point to 9 targets, 10 targets, 9 targets, 11 targets, 10 targets in numerous weeks. I mean, he missed about 6 games in the middle of last year with Sterling Shepard, but when he was on the field and Daniel Jones was the quarterback, he targeted him. So I feel comfortable from a volume standpoint, and I feel comfortable from a talent standpoint here as well. So, cool.
Hey, all of a sudden, look at these some of these wide receivers. It really hasn't changed too much since that Tyler Higbee pick, where you're basically drafting the guys that we were already eyeing at that pick. So I think that if we go running back receiver like we did at the last turn, we're gonna like the receiver that we're gonna be drafting here, and we're gonna get one of these top handcuffs. Alexander Madison's still on the board. That would definitely be my next pick.
I understand it was a bit of a panic pick, but this is the issue why when I have a top 4 tight end, I just wait until the Jarwin range, is because you look at Tyler Higbee, who we got early on, and just now in the 10th round, you're seeing Gesicki and Austin Hooper, and there was one more, right? Hayden Hurst just come off as well, or is he still available?
A little bit before. No, he went a little bit before that.
Yeah, I would just argue that Higbee's a little bit different because there's tight end 1, tight end 2 overall, tight end 3 overall upside with him. We saw it late last year, and the Rams offense, if they're good, Higbee's good. If the Rams are bad, they play at the fastest rate in the NFL. They pass the ball at the highest rate in the NFL when they're trailing. So I think that the floor is a little bit higher than some people are thinking, but for me, it's just the ceiling. I don't think an Austin Hooper has tight end 3 overall within his range of outcomes. And I'm certain that Tyler Higbee can hit that.
I agree with that.
I love offensive coordinators and play callers who just say, oh, we're losing by 2 touchdowns. Yeah, we're not going to run the ball at all. There's only a handful that still do that across the league.
I think it was 84% for the Rams pass the ball. 84% of the times when they were when their winning percentage was under 25%. That's a stat I was looking at. 84%.
That's amazing. I love it. That's full Madden. That's all of us full Madden. And we're going to hear a lot about 2 tight end sets for the Rams this offseason, obviously trading away Brandon Cooks. And, there's probably going to be some words said that, Josh Reynolds will fill in for Brandon Cooks. But even at the end of it, the Rams aren't going to run one personnel grouping 90% of the time like they used to do with 3 wide receiver sets, right? I wouldn't be surprised if we see 2 tight end sets be used 55% of the time, maybe 3 wide receiver sets 40% of the time, so on and so forth. But if anything in Sean McVay's moves this offseason from a coaching standpoint, from a personnel standpoint, it's that they're going to be more multiple offensively. They're going to change week to week. So unless he's just been lying to us since January, this is a team that is not going to stick to one personnel grouping, 90% of the time. And even if they do that with, 11 personnel, then Tyler Higbee's that tight end. It's not Gerald Everett, it's Tyler Higbee.
And I still think Cam Akers out touches every rookie running back this year.
Really?
Yeah, that's my pick.
I think he has the 3-down role close to locked out. He's just a better pass protector than Darrell Henderson. And yeah, both of us, I love Darrell Henderson too. Cam Akers just better, like all around. Like just he as a runner, I mean, Cam Akers was pretty good behind an awful offensive line. And that's the difference is Cam Akers is used to running behind that offensive line. Darrell Henderson was not.
So Dago, you're just going to fall in love with whatever Rams running back they select next year in the third round as well?
No, I didn't say I'm in love with it. I just said I think Akers outtouches him. I still think Darrell Henderson's one of the most underrated backs in the entire league.
All right, so we have about 7 selections until we are back on the clock. I mean, wide receiver, there's still these high variance upside types of these names that you have starred. Anthony Miller, who you were considering with your last selection, Jalen Reagor, Sammy Watkins, even Deshaun Jackson. I will say of those 4, I want to go Deshaun Jackson. I think that based on the vision of what the Eagles have put out this offseason, and even going back into the 2019 offseason, they needed someone like Deshaun Jackson on the team. We saw it's the tiniest sample size in that opening game against the Redskins that his usage and his presence on the field changed that offense completely. They put all their eggs in his old basket, and it worked for one game. And now that they are trying to add more types like that in Jalen Reagor, in Marquis Goodwin, but you know who's still most likely is still the best in that role and the best in that offense? To me, it's Deshaun Jackson.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think Deshaun Jackson is just a different type of playmaker. And at this point in a best ball league, the 12th round, I'm eyeing him. I think we'll grab him. I'm kind of liking. I'm hoping Anthony Miller falls to us, and we can go Anthony Miller, the higher floor pick with all the targets, and then Deshaun Jackson as hoping that he takes a 75-yard bomb to the house.
Someone I've consistently reached on throughout the offseason and will continue to do so. His only game with Carson Wentz, remember, 8 catches for 154 yards and 2 touchdowns. Any
interest in going the 2 big play threats on the Eagles in Jalen Reagor and Deshaun Jackson?
It's a possibility. If their weeks are spiked differently, that's going to help us fill out the weeks that we need from our wide receiver 3. So
I know you're on the clock right now. Can you quickly go to the person who is picking right after you in their team? Because it certainly seems like that they're going like some modified 0 running back, right?
Yeah, they're going to be drafting running backs here.
Yeah,
so we're safe.
So you're safe. So okay, 36 seconds. Which wide receiver are you going to go here?
I'm going to pick Jalen Reagor here. I'm going to trust the prediction from, I think it was Adam Kaplan, that Rager's going to lead the receiver group in snaps, targets, everything. And I'll just bet on the talent with Jalen Reagor, and they drafted him for a reason. He's a little bit healthier than Deshaun Jackson at this point, but we might draft Deshaun Jackson anyways.
Can we get a look at available running backs?
Yep.
Yeah, let's do that in a second. I quickly want to talk about Reagor because it goes back to the plan that we wanted to put in place, right? That now, because of the outcome of this wide receiver group so far, we need to go with unknowns, and so many times rookies can change the way that your fantasy season goes because of tremendous values you can hit on. It's in the realm of possibility that Jalen Reagor is a top 2 rookie wide receiver in the NFL this year, if Adam Kaplan's prediction is correct in terms of volume and then efficiency is tagged along with that. So I like this. I like it a lot.
Dago, at first glance, these running backs, I feel like we can probably wait a little bit. Maybe we go Darrell Henderson, but I think that we're better off drafting one of these upside receivers.
I'm with both of you. I think I'd rather go Deshaun Jackson here. I think we can wait on 2 of those 4 or 5 you just starred.
Right. Could we talk about Sammy Watkins? Are we just out? It's just not going to happen?
I'm so out on Sammy Watkins, man. I'm so out on it.
Dago, do you agree? Out?
Late rounds, I'm fine with it, but there's no way I'd ever click his name over Deshaun Jackson.
Few names. I mean, Preston Williams is up there. He had upside. Justin Jefferson, first-round rookie. N'Keal Harry, now has Cam Newton throwing him the football.
He just went off the board, Sammy.
We don't have to make the decision, so we'll go Deshaun Jackson to fill out. This is going to be what our wide receiver 6, it looks like. 1, 2, 3. Yep.
But in some ways, we don't have 6 wide receivers, do we? We kind of have 5 wide receivers because maybe this is unfair for me to say, and maybe this is an awful line of thinking, but Deshaun Jackson, Jalen Reagor, not cancel each other out. I'm sure they can both have big weeks in the same week at times, but they're obviously playing in the same offense and theoretically win in somewhat similar ways. So I wouldn't be surprised though. I mean, I'm just looking myself in the mirror and checking what I just said. If the Eagles use Jalen Reagor on more manufactured touches than he was able to use at TCU, so many of these wide receivers like Henry Ruggs, for example, at Alabama, manufactured touches. Reagor didn't get any of that, even though he was clearly the best player in that TCU offense. I wouldn't be surprised if Doug Peterson says that is my type in this offense this season, and he gets an extra 3 touches a week because of it.
What quarterbacks are remaining here in the middle of the 12th round? Good job resetting, John Daigle. Let's do that. Let's discuss, since we have so much time in between this pick. Let's look at the top 5 at each position and kind of just have a little discussion about the state of the position right now here in round 12. Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Baker Mayfield, Jared Goff, and Joe Burrow. Daigle? I'm typically trying to grab 3 of these this time. By now, I probably would have had a Stafford or Carson Wentz or someone in that range, and then tacked on 2 more of these guys. But of course, we went Jackson at first, so thus we're going to have, if we do have 3 guys, it's going to be 2 lower guys, or we're just going to go 2 and add someone in the mid-tier range like your Baker Mayfield or Joe Burrow behind Lamar.
And I do want to mention that Cam Newton was drafted with the 3rd selection of round 12. That means he was ahead of Drew Brees. That means he went ahead of Aaron Rodgers, just to put some context into where Cam is going right now. I really like Jimmy Garoppolo too. I mean, Evan Silva of EstablishTheRun.com has made the point that Jimmy Garoppolo has just a fantastic opening to his season. Obviously, there are no waivers in best ball formats, but at least getting that and then hopefully him continuing that positive trend makes a lot of sense throughout the season as well. But he'd probably be I wouldn't want him to be obviously my quarterback 1. If he's the 2nd quarterback, then I would feel good about that. Okay. Let's ask you this, Hayden. When is the next quarterback you're going to take? Because you have to take another one, obviously. Who are you eyeing?
Yeah, in the research I was doing for the Ravens preview, Lamar Jackson had 1 game beneath 20 fantasy points last year. So the floor is so high that I'm willing to wait on it. Out of this group, Aaron Rodgers, Baker Mayfield, Joe Burrow, I probably like Joe Burrow the best out of them. But I wouldn't reach for him right now. I plan on waiting a little bit, maybe grab Teddy Bridgewater in 3 or 4 rounds.
Daigle, there are 20 rounds in this, right? We're going to take 2 defenses. So what? You're probably aiming around round 16 for your 2nd quarterback, something like that?
Something like that. And I wouldn't mind a 2 quarterback build here since we do have Lamar. I would probably wait another round or so, depending how they fall here, because Garoppolo, even someone like Teddy Bridgewater, who is still being undervalued, would be a terrific number 2.
But you don't want to get stuck with like Gardner Minshew. You don't want to get stuck with Derek Carr, right? So you want to be like maybe the last name on that list is Phillip Rivers and Teddy Bridgewater. Fair?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind being quote unquote stuck with Minshew, but yeah, yeah.
Well, yeah, self-proclaimed Jaguars 23 fan. It's John Daigle. Okay,
maybe it is right here. Maybe we are taking one with a 2nd pick here in the 15th, 16th round.
I like it. Well, 13, 14 round.
13, 14.
Running back. These are the top 5 names left. Somehow Devontae Freeman is being drafted in this area, even though he's not an NFL team currently. A.J. Dillon, Justin Jackson, Nyheim Hines, and Jamal Williams. I would throw in Rycall Armstead's name, who you have hovered over right now. I think there's potential for some flare-ups in that backfield in Jacksonville, and the beneficiary to that flare-up, Hayden, could be Rycall Armstead for sure.
Yeah, I haven't started. I'm hoping we can wait a little bit longer on him. I think A.J. Dillon, 247 pounds behind or in an offense that I think had 16 rushing touchdowns last year. I'm kind of eyeing that as a potential goal line vulture. But I still think that we're chasing so many points at receiver that we should probably draft at least 1 receiver at the next turn.
Yep. I like it too. I mean, Dago, in our last episode, making cases for players that no one is making the case for. You made the case for A.J. Dillon, so that must be music to your ears.
Sure, especially in this range. This is where you kind of like them. We need a upside guy since we only have 3 running backs at this time, and A.J. Dillon fits the mold of that.
Obviously, our competition, who is drafting immediately after us, still only has 4 running backs on his roster.
And they are bad.
It's Chris Carson, Sony Michel, and Boston Scott. Congratulations. No offense to whoever that is.
Hey, but let's talk about our receivers here if we're going to be roasting his running backs. We have Stefan Diggs, Marquis Brown, Jameson Crowder, Sterling Shepard, Jalen Reagor, Deshaun Jackson. So not great either.
That's a lot of slot routes.
Which is good.
It's fine.
Which is good.
Hey, if we draft another receiver here, that means we'll have 7 out of our first 14 picks will be receivers. I think we can get enough production. Keep in mind, this is a non-flex league. We're just looking for 3 wide receivers each week, not 4. So I think we can get enough points where we just need our running backs to hit and the Ravens offense to be a top 3 unit again. And we're at least we're in range.
Okay. So 1 pick left for you. We've talked about the, idea of taking another quarterback here to solidify that spot. We can go running back or wide receiver. What are you feeling like right now, Hayden?
I like the Daigle call of A.J. Dillon as more of a handcuff. Maybe you get a couple weeks out of him where he scores a touchdown or 2. But I think we need to get our 4th running back here, especially if we think the guy after us is going to be drafting one. So I'm going to go A.J. Dillon.
All right. So that means the running back group right now, Joe Mixon, Kenyan Drake, Latavius Murray, and A.J. Dillon. I wouldn't say I feel like a 10 out of 10 about that, but almost, unless you just get extremely lucky, you're going to feel good about your first 2 running backs. And after that, there are obviously some questions. I think Latavius has fewer questions than a lot of other mid-round running backs out there. So
my thought process is if Joe Mixon or Kenyan Drake miss time, we're not winning this league. If they don't meet expectations, we're out anyways. So I don't mind just scraping the having a good RB3. If either one of those guys isn't a top 8 running back, we are out. We are not winning first place. So what's the point of playing it safe and drafting somebody like Sony Michel or something like that to be your wide or RB3? We're out.
I like it. Okay. Right after you, Jay Sternberger, another John Daigle favorite, just came off the board here in round 13. Double tight end, Irv Smith, at the top of round 14. So where do you think you're going here, Hayden Winks? I mean, at wide receiver, the likes of Preston Williams, Hunter Renfrow, Alshon Jeffrey, Larry Fitzgerald, John Ross are out there. I mean, I don't love any.
Ooh, Brandon Ayuk, Daigle. Yes. What do we think? Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I was about to mention Brandon Ayuk because of the Deebo Samuel injury.
Brandon Ayuk and Antonio Gibson are still on the board. This format doesn't fit Antonio Gibson as well as FFPC does, but again, he's an all-around piece that has upside.
Do you think that we can get sneaky and hope that Brandon Ayuk doesn't get drafted because he's so far down these rankings and draft a Preston Williams? Because Preston Williams, I think, would be pretty similar to Ayuk overall. I think I'm going to draft Preston Williams and hope that we get
one undrafted free agent, one first-round running back, or first-round wide receiver. Why did you go with the undrafted free agent over the first-round wide receiver?
Well, we have seen Preston Williams have a some success in the NFL, and he was not a undrafted receiver because of talent. He was an undrafted receiver for other reasons, and we saw Preston Williams be a day 2 type of talent, and I'm just hoping that we can get Brandon Ayuk later, trying to sneak him in there because he's so far down these rankings. We'll see. Risky.
Yes.
I'm actually on board with Hayden here. Remember, Preston Williams led the Dolphins in targets while he was on the field, and we had 4.5 years of context with Devontae Parker just underwhelming us. And then Preston Williams goes away, and then suddenly Devontae Parker breaks out. There's literally a reason, you could argue that Preston Williams is the best receiver on the team right now.
That's quite an argument to make.
Josh, did you like Preston Williams coming out? I thought he showed enough at Colorado State.
I'm such a big Preston Williams fan. He's been on this podcast before. John Daigle and I interviewed him at the Super Bowl. Was an incredibly nice guy.
He told me I was dressed better.
Well,
he said I was ready to party. That means it was better.
Yes, I think memory might be serving you incorrectly. in that point. You're also wearing my shirt that day, John Daigle.
I was wearing. That's another story for another pod. Yeah.
I would have, instead of going with Preston Williams, I probably would have locked up a second quarterback here. I probably would have gone Drew Lock in that scenario.
No.
Or Baker Mayfield. Just well, I wouldn't have gone Drew Lock because he's the same buy, obviously, as Lamar Jackson. So
that's a good point.
That wouldn't have worked.
That's not why I was yelling, but sure.
We're on the same page. Yeah, because let me ask you this. Antonio Gibson, is he listed at running back or wide receiver here? Let's type him in.
Wide receiver on Best Ball 10s, I believe.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, star that name for sure.
All right.
Because if Ayuk isn't there and if we're going upside, then why not go Antonio Gibson? But that's a conversation for another time. So,
yeah, and I understand the argument. It's kind of like DraftKings and FanDuel pricing. When one player is lower on one site, then you know to adjust on the other. Antonio Gibson is just, his ADP is going much lower than high stakes FFPC drafts right now. So he's still an incredible value at this point of the draft.
I didn't love Brandon Ayuk coming out of school, Hayden, to go back to your question. I think there were some significant questions about him, but I'm also to the point in doing this long enough where my questions don't necessarily matter when an offensive coordinator or play caller like Kyle Shanahan, head coach, loves a player to the degree that he loves Brandon Ayuk. Now, if Ayuk is gone, I still think that we should maybe try to invest in that 49ers offense somehow, in a Kendrick Bourne a little bit later on, in someone, because while Deebo Samuel's timeline, in quotes, puts him, directly at the start basically of the regular season, foot injuries have been season destroyers in the past for other people. I'm not putting that on Deebo Samuel, but I don't think that we can have nearly the expectations that we had with Deebo. And because of that, and I talked about Jimmy Garoppolo start the season, someone in that offense in the receiving group, other than George Kittle, who I think is going to have a monster season, is going to benefit. And it could be Ayuk. It could be Kendrick Bourne. It could be someone like that.
Yeah, I thought Brandon Ayuk, the best way to describe him is I thought he was going to be an NFL team's wide receiver too. I'm not sure if he's quite as gifted with route running to take on the wide receiver one duties. He was more of a straight line athlete, screens, vertical routes, posts. But like you said, if Shanahan's in, I'm in.
Unless that player's named Joe Williams. Otherwise, if Shanahan's in, I'm in.
There are, I'm sure Joe Williams won't be drafted in this draft.
That'll be fun.
There are about 11 selections to go. There are about 5 quarterbacks to go back to that tab, Hayden, who I would feel comfortable having as my quarterback too. I think there are 6 for Daigle, including Gardner Minshew. Any nerves here, Hayden, that all 5 might be gone by the time it gets to you?
Nope. I don't know why, but yeah, I hope so. Otherwise, we are in trouble. But
right. But you're sure
we'll figure it out.
One of them with one of these selections, right? And Kirk Cousins, Drew Lock, Sam Darnold, Phillip Rivers, and Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah, and I think I like Teddy Bridgewater the best. I think that there's a chance that the Panthers finish top 3 in pass attempts this year, and just simply because of that, I think that Teddy Bridgewater is going to beat ADP, and especially with the talent they have in Carolina, just at receiver with Robbie Anderson now involved. I'll bet on the volume with Teddy Bridgewater.
One of your starred players, Darrington Evans, also just went off the board in the middle of the 15th.
Sad.
Yeah, a few more. I mean, this is when the shots are being taken. Brandon Ayuk is off the board. Rykel Armstead is off the board. Some guy named Ian Hartitz used to also bring up Russell Gage's name quite a bit. Kenny Stills, Alan Lazard, O.J. Howard just went off the board. This is the area, obviously, you find your favorites, Antonio Gibson, and then you just identify them and you draft them because that's what it's all about. If you nail in one of these, in season-long leagues, these a lot of cases are players that you would just end up dropping. But here, you, to me, try to bank on ceiling plays here. So, yeah.
Daigle, quick best ball specific question. Do you like having 8 wide receivers? Like, at what point do you stop drafting wide receivers?
The number is typically 7 for me, but in this case, we know we're going to have 2 quarterbacks and 2 tight ends, so we're tacking on 1 player each. With this build as well, this might be a 7 running back team. So,
Okay. So there's about 2 selections to go. Hayden, talk us through it.
Well, Tyler only has one quarterback as well. So our first pick is going to be the best available quarterback, which is we are now on the clock. And Teddy Bridgewater just got drafted. So that's not great. So now we're between Sam Darnold, Phillip Rivers, Kirk Cousins, Drew Lock, Gardner Minshew. We do have Jamison Crowder with Sam Darnold, but I don't think that he's the guy to be wanting. Maybe Phillip Rivers? I don't know. Daigle, help me out here.
I would probably go Cousins, and that I expect the Vikings offense to see more volume, given that they basically threw their entire nickel package into the ocean.
He's the best passer out of all of them.
Yeah, I would go Kirk Cousins, then I would go Phillip Rivers. I mean, I think low-key Rivers is surrounded by a lot of talent, man, in that offensive line. I mean,
remember last year as well, through the first 8 games, Kirk Cousins was one of Hayden Winks' 120 MVP candidates.
That's right. That's right. He was balling out for a while. No Steph Diggs will hurt him a little bit. That's my take.
Okay, so hopefully we cause some confusion to the person that is drafting between us, even though he just took Gardner Minshew. Daigle, are you drafting on your other computer?
No. Why?
Just thought since he was drafted ahead of the likes of Drew Lock and
Well, I mean, he has a rushing floor. What are you talking about? That's why I don't understand the hate you keep yelling about Gardner Minshew when he was a QB1 overall before he got benched for Nick Foles, because they had no choice but to bench him for Nick Foles. They had a contract over his head. They had to figure out what to do with him.
I'm just having fun. All right, we could you could go defense here. I know you're on the tab and the likes of the 49ers and Pittsburgh and obviously New England. And I think New England is now more appealing since they have a better quarterback in the fold. Are there any players that you feel like you just need to exit your roster with now? Because obviously now is the time to do that with those, because we have so much time in between our next selection.
Yeah, I'm at the point where all these guys are pretty much the same, aka they're scoring 0 points for us anyways at running back and receiver, that I'm kind of tempted to go with one of the defenses just because we're going to be 20 picks later and these top defenses are going to be off the board. Do you have a preference, Daigle? 49ers, Steelers, Patriots?
I've typically been waiting, but if we're drafting one, I'm going the Steelers. They have the top 2. Hold on, let's see here. I want to make sure I'm right. I think it's the second softest projected schedule on this. No, it's the softest projected schedule for a defense on the year. So
okay, Steelers it is. I usually typically wait too, but I think that since we were at the turn and there's a 20 pick difference between our next pick, that it was kind of worth it. I mean, none of these running backs, I mean, you can read the list in a little bit, but these running backs are bad. The receivers also bad. Maybe we can get Antonio Gibson.
The cheat code defense remains the Colts, and they just continue not being drafted or going super late. But easiest schedule according to projected Vegas win totals, as well as second softest projected win schedule behind the Steelers. So I'm pretty much taking the Colts in every single league whatsoever.
Maybe that's who we can close out our draft with later on. Okay, let's do a little reset. First of all, here is Hayden Wink's team through 16 rounds. Lamar Jackson and Kirk Cousins at quarterback. At running back, you have Joe Mixon, Kenyan Drake, Latavius Murray, and A.J. Dillon. I bet we add at least another name or two in that group. Wide receiver, Stefan Diggs, Marquis Brown, Jamison Crowder, Sterling Shepard, Jalen Reagor, Deshaun Jackson, Preston Williams. I will never exit a draft like this, and I love that we're doing it today. Tight end, Mark Andrews and Tyler Higby, our strongest group, all things considered. And then the Pittsburgh Steelers at defense. Let's go position by position on who's still left at the board right now to give the people at home an idea of that. Sam Darnold, Derek Carr are the only two. I mean, Dwayne Haskins is up there as well. At running back, Devontae Freeman still, Jamal Williams, Justice Hill, Carlos Hyde, Rashad Penny, Malcolm Brown. Gross. Okay, go over to wide receiver.
Bad.
Larry Fitzgerald, Tyrell Williams, Dede Westbrook, Cole Beasley, T. Higgins. Randall Cobb is, I think, actually an interesting name.
He's interesting. Yeah, I like him.
Going safe. I mean, Josh Reynolds, I mentioned before. Steven Sims just went off the board. I think Devin Funchess is another name. Andy Isabella.
Jalen Hurd.
Yeah. And then tight end, which, again, is a position we would not look at anymore. Dawson Knox, David Njoku, Gerald Everett, Kyle Rudolph, Will Disley. Yeah. Okay. So about 12 picks until our selection. Look, this is the point of the draft where, it's not going to go in order, Hayden. These are the final 4 rounds, final 4 picks for us to make. What's your strategy for them?
Well, we're going to grab one more tight end, or not tight end, defense, probably with our last pick since we drafted the Steelers. So I think we'll probably be our defense most weeks. We at least need one more running back, possibly 2, and then likely another receiver. I think we're set at quarterback. I think we're set at tight end with just going 2 apiece, which is pretty rare to do that. But with Lamar Jackson and then Mark Andrews, Tyler Higbee, I'm fine with those 2 at those positions.
I think it was smart for us to take defenses because a lot of them have come off the board since San Francisco, Buffalo, Tampa Bay, New Orleans, Kansas City. So getting ahead of that run, Hayden Winks, tip of the cap to you. Very intelligent move. Imagine that coming from Hayden Winks.
Unfortunately, that was my only intelligent move this draft. But honestly, I think we're going to get enough wide receiver production to make this thing work. Once again, it just comes down to Joe Mixon, Kenyan Drake. Please be top 6 running backs.
You keep citing wide receiver value. I still think we need a little more running back value on this team.
Yeah, but I don't know who. Who's going to present that to us? Is it Carlos Hyde to bank on a Chris Carson injury? I don't want to do anything with Chris Thompson, Hayden.
He'll only catch 40, 50 passes this year and average more points than any of these guys available. But that's all you're getting. You're not getting any.
Why not Marquis Brown?
Okay. That's why. I don't know.
I would rather take a chance on Josh Kelly. Gio Bernard, that's cool. I usually don't handcuff, but I'm fine with it. I like Jerick McKinnon. That's kind of where my list ends on the rest of these guys.
I like Carlos Hyde the best out of this group.
Okay.
But that's not saying much.
Can we plan, and there's a number of picks to go, can we plan on Carlos Hyde and then either Randall Cobb or Antonio Gibson?
Yep. Sounds good.
Okay, well, now I got to fill some time.
I'm actually quite shocked Antonio Gibson isn't off the board yet. This is kind of mesmerizing.
I wonder if people are clicking running back, scrolling down, not seeing his name, and then just forgetting about it.
He should be our first selection here, but
I agree. He will be.
So for all those listening, just remember, scroll down a little bit. Sort by rank or ADP, scroll down, and just make sure you star guys that are getting lost in the weeds.
Since we have, again, 20 selections after these 2 that you'll make in a little bit, in between that time, why don't we go through each person's team and just kind of talk about a little bit after that, since we didn't do that last time, but I feel like since, we're basically back-to-back picks, we could do that in a moment. This is a tough one. It's odd. I feel like I love so many players, but then you get to this point in best ball drafts and there just aren't enough to love. And maybe that is because of the offseason that we're in. We did not have OTAs, so we did not have rookie mini camps. We didn't have buzz really on any of these names. And there goes Antonio Gibson directly in front of Hayden Winks.
Yeah,
Just
I like Carlos
Hyde
Hyde the best. Yeah.
Okay, well, Carlos Hyde is there, and Randall Cobb also went off the board. So we'll have to regroup here at wide receiver. I mean, it can't be Miles Boykin.
Hey, stack it up, baby.
Can it be Kendrick Bourne?
No.
Is he still here?
If it can't be Miles Boykin, it can't be.
What about T. Higgins? We talked about Joe Burrow and the Bengals offense. I mean, there's a chance that he would have the wide receiver 3 job, and he's big enough that I think that the touchdown potential is at least there for maybe a couple weeks where we can throw him in as our wide receiver 3. I don't know.
These are all awful. Scroll down.
Jalen Hurd or Miles Boykin would be my pick.
This is disgusting. Again, Kendrick Bourne is who I like the most out of this group? Go back to the top.
Yep.
The name I like the most in this group is Josh Reynolds.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Tyrell Williams. No. Okay.
The name I like the best is Josh Reynolds, but
I still think we need to add a running back here.
We just did.
No, I think we need to add another one.
Why?
We have 5 right now, and basically 2 are starters, and the rest are fingers crossed.
Which one would you go with?
Joe Mixon, Kenyan Drake, and then the other 3, Latavius Murray, A.J. Dillon, and Carlos Hyde. That needs to add another one.
Would it be? I mean, I literally think Chris Thompson's the best out of all of them. Just you're not getting any upside, but at least if one of those guys goes down, that he's going to have some weeks where he's going to have 10 points. But
okay, you just have 2 selections after this, and one is going to be a defense. So again, I guess you have 3 selections. No, 2 selections after this, I think. So it had to be wide receiver, in the second to last round. And look, none of these. Okay, you went Chris Thompson. I understand it.
Yes, I mean, if Leonard Fournette gets cut or traded or something like that, then we're looking at Reichwell, Armstead, and Chris Thompson. And Chris Thompson's more established. Getting grouped up with Jay Gruden again, I think there's a chance that he sees 40 catches this year. Okay, let's do this. Since we have so many picks, let's start off with the top of the draft. Boom. Yes, this was the first pick. Here's the team. We go back to the top. Yeah.
Wentz, Matthew Stafford, Christian McCaffrey, Darius Geis, Ronald Jones, Naeem Hines, Kenny Galladay, Juju Smith-Schuster, DJ Chark, Julian Edelman, Mike Williams, Paris Campbell, Zach Ertz, and Blake Jarwin. That is out of the 101 slot with the Baltimore Ravens defense and the Saints defense.
That's a good team. Like that's a team that we're trying to compete with going with all these crazy stacks and weird strategies. It's because we have to beat that team. That team's stacked. Yeah, it's a wonderful team. Obviously, running back outside of CMC is not something that you feel comfortable with at all because it's Darius Geis, it's Ronald Jones, it's Naeem Hines. But man, do I feel comfortable with that wide receiver group. That wide receiver group is stacked in Galladay, in Juju, in DJ Chark. And I mentioned at the top of the show, I think Julian Edelman right now, where he was going as wide receiver 40, wide receiver 34, wide receiver 35 makes more sense to me now. I agree with that. Should we go to the next team? Yep. This is the 102. Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield at quarterback. Saquon Barkley, Le'Veon Bell, Kareem Hunt, Mark Ingram, and Darrington Evans. Wide receiver, Odell Beckham, Allen Robinson, T.Y. Hilton, John Brown, Rashad Perryman, Michael Pittman. Michael Pittman's a nice name. And D.D. Westbrook. Then at tight end, Noah Fant and Rob Gronkowski. Daigle?
Tight end's fine. It's just a couple of mid-range tight ends that'll compete for tight end 1, whatever. I really like the running backs a lot. I like what he did with 2 low-end QB1 potential options in Allen and Baker Mayfield. I think receiver depth is quite weak, but Beckham, Robinson, T.Y. rounding out your top 3 is pretty good weekly.
Yeah, I think there's a chance that Rashad Perryman leads the Jets in wide receiver points this year. I don't think that is out of the question at all. And I think Michael Pittman could have a very, very solid rookie season to the tune of maybe 650, 700 yards.
I know he's a rookie, but since you were highest on Mims coming out, don't you foresee, though, that Mims is the true alpha among the two? Or does that not matter for a rookie this season?
I don't know. I mean, it's one where, I thought Mims was a first-round talent, and then I believe Hayden, didn't he go at the end of round 2, at the beginning of round 3? Yeah, like 55 or something like that. Right. So it just seems like the NFL is lower on him than I am. Yeah. And, I don't know what to think of an Adam Gase offense. I just think that we know what Jamison Crowder is, and we know heading into a season, we've heard that he's going to be the primary pass catcher on an NFL team when it never works out that way, positively, I should say. So Rashad Perryman, who has had his moments towards the ends of the last few seasons, it could be him. It could be him.
In best ball, I've been going Perryman over Mims, and if you're playing any season-long leagues right now, I don't mind Mims because you can just figure it out within a couple of weeks, then drop him afterwards. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't just last year. Like Perryman is now flashed for 2 seasons in a row in the month of December at least. So he will have a starting role, even if it's in 3 wide sets. He'll be one of the 3 starting receivers for the Jets. So sure, I do like Perryman.
I see what you're doing right now, Hayden. You were searching for Antonio Brown's name in that wide receiver group. Were you
long gone? Yeah, but worth looking. He's going to be going being undrafted into some of these leagues. Like I'm sure, I don't know where he's ranked on like Yahoo's best ball rankings, but it's likely not high enough.
So he is gone? I thought you were searching in the running back group.
Oh,
yeah, he is gone.
He is gone.
Okay. All right. So is this 103 on the right side?
Yes, with Zeke.
Okay. So this is Ben Roethlisberger, Jared Goff, Ezekiel Elliott, James Conner, J.K. Dobbins, Tony Pollard, Damian Harris. Then at wide receiver, Chris Godwin, Terry McLaurin. Could you scroll down a little bit? DK Metcalf, Golden Tate, Russell Gage, Kenny Stilton, Danny Amendola, Devin Funchess, and then at tight end you have Evan Ingram and Jared Cook.
This explains my golf game. Whenever I do one thing good or do one thing bad, then try to over adjust. Like he picked a couple receivers and then needed receivers and then over adjusted and came away with Russell Gage, Kenny Stills, Danny Amendola, etc.
That's a really gross foursome. I mean,
it's pretty bad.
Yes, that's not the 4 names that I would want. I know there's one pick right ahead of you, Hayden Winks. You basically need a wide receiver here with one of these next 2 selections.
Yes. We also need we're going to draft our defense here
first. Yeah.
Man, Arizona, hopefully that their offense is better and that they
same bye week. Don't do that.
Oh, good point. Man. Miami?
No. What, Miami?
I think their secondary is tremendous.
That is true.
Interesting.
It's not the Jaguars.
I guess their secondary. Yeah.
Sacks and turnovers. That's the name.
Oh, yeah. It's coverage through pass rush. Yeah. Okay. It's just like their pass rushes. Oh, so
it is. But I mean, Hayden maybe can back me up again with another formula out of his pocket that, success and coverage equals, sacks that last 3+ seconds. And maybe they can force that, in a quote unquote Patriots like defense. So.
Yeah. And at least they get to pick off Josh Allen a couple times twice a year, and then maybe even Cam Newton and Sam Darnold too. So not so bad.
Who has more defensive points at the end of the year, Carolina or the placeholder at the very bottom of Best Ball 10's defense column?
Yeah, that's bad.
That is really bad.
Don't auto draft placeholder, everyone, just to let you know.
All right. So a wide receiver, KJ Hamler for Spike Weeks.
I like him. I think he's a underappreciated talent. There's Kendrick Bourne down there.
I mean, thank you for saying his name and not me, because I feel like I'm the other.
He's going to see the field, and if Debo's on PUP list, I mean, we could get 1 or 2 weeks out of Kendrick Bourne if we're lucky to start the year. Didn't you say that the opening schedule's strong early on too? Yeah,
it sets up well for passing game.
I would go running back. Do what you want. I would go running back.
All right, I'll keep Kendrick Bourne highlighted. Any of these names?
Josh Kelly or Gio Bernard. Gio Bernard would be a handcuff, of course, but
yeah, I'm just not convinced that he would actually be the true handcuff. They drafted a couple day 3 guys that I liked.
I've heard that
couple years.
Go Kendrick Bourne.
Kendrick Bourne, it is. Why not? Maybe Debo Samuel re-injures his foot. I mean, we're talking about like one of the worst injuries for a player that likes to cut a lot and do a lot of his stuff after the catch. The Jones fracture is not kind to those type of players. So maybe Kendrick Bourne starts more games than we're kind of expecting.
All right. We are done with this draft. Let us review it. Lamar Jackson, Kirk Cousins at quarterback, Joe Mixon, Kenyan Drake, Latavius Murray, A.J. Dillon, Carlos Hyde, Chris Thompson at running back, Stefan Diggs, Marquis Brown, Jamison Crowder, Sterling Shepard, Jalen Reagor, Deshaun Jackson, and Preston Williams, and Kendrick Bourne at wide receiver, tight ends Mark Andrews, Tyler Higby, and at defense, Pittsburgh and Miami. Before I let Hayden go as drafter, John Daigle, thoughts?
I think we came away with a good team. Less controversial for sure than our last draft. A few minor adjustments here and there, but even for players like Stefan Diggs, we were arguing about X or Y because we were going receiver no matter what. That just comes down to preferences, and preferences, who cares? Just pick the guy you like. So overall, as long as you get the positions you want, which I think we did, yeah, I like it.
Hayden, this is unlike a draft I've had so far. This will be unlike a draft I have for the rest of the year. I appreciate you for going through this with us. What do you think of it?
There's a chance that we lead the league at quarterback, at tight end, and at defense. And then we're just praying that Joe Mixon and Kenyan Drake could figure it out, be top 6 options. At wide receiver, we drafted a lot of guys that we liked, but obviously we're probably going to be one of the worst wide receiver teams. But at the end of the day, we're starting 3 of them. We have 8 or 9 or 8 receivers that we thought could do something with spiked weeks, and I'm okay with that. Remember, we're trying to beat Christian McCaffrey's team. That's tough to do out of the 11th spot, so I'm fine with coming in last place if that's what it takes.
Christian McCaffrey's team is Eric Belair, I believe, who's a loyal listener.
There we go. I think that the key to our team being successful at the end of the year is going to be the Philadelphia Eagles. and if Deshaun Jackson or Jalen Reagor can emerge as a top 20 wide receiver, because if one of them do, then we nailed considerable value when we selected both of those names. I think it's absolutely reasonable for one of those names too. I'm not sure which one it's going to be. We've heard great hype for both names. I've hyped up both names as well. I'm glad we have both, but that is something I think we do have to count on. Hayden, would you agree?
Yep. And then the New York teams, we have Sterling Shepard and Jamison Crowder. We're betting on both of those guys leading their team in targets. And I think Sterling Shepard's kind of going to be the guy that I'm eyeing, that we need to take over that offense. Hopefully Golden Tate and Darius Slayton aren't going to interfere with that. But yeah, we need to get one or two of these late round receivers to become top 35 options, and then we'll be competing.
All right. That's it. We did it. This was our live draft for July. I hope all of you have a tremendous July 4th weekend. If you enjoyed this episode at any moment, be sure to subscribe to the Roto Football Podcast. If you're on YouTube, go search on your phone for the Rotoworld Football Podcast. Our goal is to help you win your fantasy draft, help you win your fantasy season, and hopefully we did some of that today. For John Daigle and Hayden Winks, I am Josh Norris. We will talk to you all soon. Up the Villa. See ya.